Megan Sukys and her husband often joked about bodies being buried in the basement of their 1920 townhouse, the first condo building in Tacoma. But when they finally cracked the concrete for a remodeling job, they found something more dangerous.
If I learned one thing from Scooby-Doo, it's that old houses hold great mysteries. And so when we moved into our old townhouse that is now closing in on 100 years, back in 2000, I felt confident I was going to uncover some great mystery. But by the time we made it to 2006, the best thing I had found in that house was a leather postcard from a 1907 Episcopal Church conference. I was devastated. And my husband tried to cheer me up. He said, "You know, Megan, there could still be bodies in the basement." And I said, "Ooh, do you think so?" He said, "We can only hope." And lucky for us, we got a chance that year. We had just had a baby, and we were already thinking about having a second one. And since we live in a townhouse, we didn't really have the option of growing out or growing up, but we did have the option of digging deep. Our contractor said if he could dig down 2 feet in the basement, he could get us legal head height, and we could use the basement as a living space. So they hauled in the sledgehammers and the jackhammers, and they went at that concrete floor for a week. And every night when we got home from work, my husband and I would tiptoe down the basement stairs, you know, like domestic Indiana Joneses. And we'd pick through the rubble, and I was hoping, you know, maybe a bone, maybe buried pirate treasure, trapdoor, hidden room, speakeasy, kind of moonshine, I don't know, anything. Nothing. But then they started to dig. And I got a call at work from my contractor, and he said, "We found something." And I said, "Bodies?" And he said, I think this is worse than bodies." Worse than bodies? I came running home and went down into the basement to discover a labyrinth underneath my house. Long, twisting, tunnel-like holes running the length of the house. Big ones, like big enough that I could have climbed inside and maybe crawled to some other fantasy realm with David Bowie. I don't know, I didn't go there. I did notice that one of the holes went directly underneath our chimney, so that our chimney, once exposed, we could see was only being held up by a few inches under the bricks on either side. And as I looked at these big, twisting, long, snaking tunnels, I remembered Frank Herbert is from Tacoma. Frank Herbert is the man who wrote the novel Dune. Dune is the science fiction novel about the planet where giant sandworms tunnel under the ground. And I wondered, did Frank Herbert know something about Tacoma? Could Dune have been based on actual events? Do we have sandworms underneath our home? Is that what these holes are? And my contractor didn't think so. And so I kept pondering the mystery. Could it be? Could it be? Could it be? Until he finally said, you know, it doesn't really matter. It just needs to be fixed. And it's a simple fix. You fill the holes. And for me, I just wanted my house to be stable again, and I wanted it fixed. So I said, fine, do whatever. They hauled in the dirt. They buried all that dirt in those holes. They tamped it down. They put down a concrete floor. They put in the framing. They put up the drywall. And then the rains came. And I had a new mystery in my basement. My labyrinth had become a wetlands, and there was water everywhere. Now, our basement had always been dry, and that's why we thought it would make sense to dig deep. It had been dry. It was no longer dry. And my contractor said, "Oh, I can fix that." And I said, you know, unless you have a rewind button so I can go back in time and sell this damn house, I don't think you can fix it. I felt so stupid for thinking this project could be an answer. I mean, it was kind of poetic in the beginning, like, we're going to dig down roots and we're going to plant ourselves in Tacoma. It did not occur to me that putting down roots also meant being stuck in the mud. And as I looked across my town, I saw all the things I had been trying so hard to ignore all those years. This town literally stinks. Our soil is full of arsenic. Our air is poisoned. Our history is based on environmental exploitation, genocide, racism, and some really lousy decisions by elected officials. And I'm stuck here. But then I found a guy who specialized in dry basements. That's all he did. And when I told him the problem, he said, "You know, it sounds like those holes were doing you a favor. I mean, now that they're gone, the water has to go somewhere." And it was profound. It was obvious, but it felt profound to me because I had seen those open spaces as a liability, a destabilizing force in my life. I had seen them as a problem and something I wanted to get rid of, hide, not see, not have happen, pretend like it never existed. But in fact, those open spaces were the only things that were keeping our head above water. And so the guy fixed it, and his solution was putting the holes back. But strategically, so we didn't put it back underneath the chimney, and we didn't put it under load-bearing walls, but we carefully tracked out new holes that took all that water and drained it away from our house. And it worked. 10 years later, we've almost paid off the loan. Our house has stayed dry. We've put down roots in Tacoma, and I've seen a lot of those problems that drove me crazy get better. And we have those 2 kids now, and the other day, all 4 of us were down in the basement watching cartoons, and I looked at us all sitting in there together, and I realized my husband was right. There are bodies in the basement.